The challenges to being a woman in the practice of law were not that dissimilar from being a woman in general back in the 80s and 90s. I just remember knowing I could never say I had to leave early or I couldn't be somewhere because of a family obligation. It was just something that you couldn't say, and we didn't. There was some other place we had to be, some other reason we had to be there that did not have to do with family, because that would have been a little chink. We would have exposed vulnerability, and inevitably when you did that, bad things happened. So I do hope that has changed, because I remember distinctly feeling like I never could identify personal commitments or family commitments that I needed to have interfere with my professional ones without feeling a little bit vulnerable as a result. And that took a long time to change, I think, in our bar.
So I came into the practice in 1995. We were right off the Year of the Woman, 1992, largest group of women in the U.S. Congress. A year later, we had our first female U.S. Attorney General in Janet Reno. There was a momentum of women in leadership roles. I came into the bar, and 3 years later, I'm helping incorporate our first statewide Women's Bar Association. And 2 years later, we get our first woman, now Chief Justice Linda Delanis, on our highest court, the New Hampshire Supreme Court. My first memories are, this is an exciting time to be a woman lawyer.
I think it's in their DNA. I really do. I think women who really blaze that type of trail had to believe in it in every part of their body, because I think it would have been easy to say no or give up or say, I want to do this differently, or this is just too hard. So I think that there's just something inherent in those individuals who knew what they were doing for themselves, for their families, and then for whether they even thought about that it would be for people who come after them.
When I started in my career, I was a public defender, a staff attorney in the trenches, and so I was in court on a daily basis. And I don't remember there being a lot of female trial attorneys. There certainly were women lawyers, but you didn't see them in court every day, and they certainly weren't often lead counsel on big cases. I remember a female mentor telling me very early in my career, when I appeared in front of a particular older male judge who will remain unnamed, that I should not wear a pantsuit, that it was not expected that a woman would wear a pantsuit, but rather would wear a skirt. Well, I think there were a number of women pioneers, obviously, and the first thing I would say is thank you. I think they stood for the proposition that you could push the envelope, you could respectfully stand your ground and do a job that might have been perceived to be more male-oriented.
Yeah, there are a lot of trailblazers, and I think they are inspirational, and I admire them. Carolyn Gross is one, who was the first female Speaker of the House. Marilla Ricker, obviously, who not only, she tried to be governor. She applied to be governor in 1910, and she didn't do it because she knew she would get the right to apply. She did it because she wanted to bring public attention to the fact that women are capable of doing what men do, and they weren't being accepted back then. So I think she was a trailblazer because she took all kinds of risk, knowing it may not get her anywhere, but it really made room for those of us that are here now to be able to succeed.
We wouldn't be where we are today without those women pioneers blazing a trail for us. I think it's vital to understand their struggles, to truly appreciate where we are today. And so I would like to also indicate that the centennial celebration is really an ideal way to reflect upon, learn, study, and appreciate the history of women in the law. And so for those women pioneers, thank you. And we appreciate all the work you've done. You have made a difference.
I think that the reason I have the luxury of not having spent my career focused on my gender is because there are so many women before me who paved the way and smoothed out the road for me and so many other women. I recently saw the photograph of some of the first 100 women, and I was surprised at how many I knew, how many were inspirational to me. And Kathy Green was in the photo. She's a phenomenal criminal defense lawyer and a giant in the criminal defense bar, and somebody I very much admire. She at times even appears in front of me now as a lawyer. She's in the photo. Barbara Keshen is in the photograph. Barbara Keshen ended her career at the ACLU. She was before that a public defender, phenomenal lawyer. She was a prosecutor before that, just a career dedicated to public service. And then in the center of the photo is Justice Delanus, who's still on the bench and is an icon for women in this state. And so I would say to all of those women, thank you for your courage, your perseverance, and your resilience.
I think women have the opportunity now to do essentially any job in the legal profession, whether it's a lawyer, a prosecutor, a defender, a judge. And I don't believe that is different than when I started. I think when I started, there had been enough trails blazed for us that all of those opportunities were there.
The opportunities for women lawyers today are plentiful. I think there's almost nothing that women attorneys can't do. I think the challenge is trying to figure out how to practice law in the space and environment that you want to accomplish what you want. I think the pathways were a lot more clear when we were first getting out of law school, and I think there are many more and varied pathways now.
I think the challenges that women face today are similar to the challenges we've had. I think there are more opportunities today. We just have more women lawyers, more women in leadership, and there is strength in numbers. There are women and men committed to ensuring gender equality in our profession. And I think an opportunity we have today is to work together to finish that agenda.
We have the first woman dean of our law school in this state. We've had our first female attorney general, first female U.S. attorney, 2 female governors, and the chief of our Supreme Court and the chief of our Superior Court are female attorneys. So I think we can be proud of where we are right now, but I can see areas that we take this momentum and we keep moving.
You know, to me, gender doesn't play a role in the way that I carry myself, or in the way that I interact, or in the way that I practice law. But I would say that, and probably many women who have been at this for a while would tell you that we have spent large portions of our career perhaps being underestimated. And I have always found that to be a great asset. I was once trying a case, and at a break, opposing counsel came over to counsel table and he said, "I bet you were one of those girls in school who always had the right answer." And I looked at him and I said, "As a matter of fact, I was."
You know, I think if you look back at 100 years, obviously enormous strides have been made. We're talking about a time where women couldn't practice law to now, I would say I see as many women practicing as men. I see them in all facets of the profession and doing all sorts of different things. But I agree that there's still work to be done.
As a young female attorney starting out, I was often mistaken as a paralegal or a secretary or an intern. And so it was sometimes hard to overcome that, where I was already new to the profession and I had to, you know, assert myself as being the attorney. I think that women should be further along in this state. I think that there's still not equality in the judiciary as far as the number of women on the bench. There are much fewer women partners and women in management positions at firms and in leadership positions. And so we should have more of that. I'd like to see that, you know, progress more. And there are still a lot of the same challenges that there were, you know, years ago with dealing with work-life balance and women who are trying to be a mother and be an attorney at the same time, be a good employee, work hard, put in the hours, but then have time for their families or for their extracurricular activities. So there, you know, these challenges are still there. I hope that we make more progress in the next 100 years.
I think there is still a lot to be done. You know, just using the New Hampshire Superior Court judiciary as a small example, 21 judges and less than 30% are female. So, and I think the statistics now are that in law schools are graduating women at the same rate they're graduating men, approximately 50-50. Yet both the bar and the judiciary is underrepresented in terms of female-male.
There are a lot of opportunities in the boardrooms and in the legislature and in the courtrooms for women to succeed and be embraced. And so I think that we're seeing a lot of those sort of strides over time. I don't feel that there's ever been an opportunity for me that I couldn't reach for because I'm a woman. I feel that there have been opportunities everywhere, and it's really my responsibility to take advantage of them. I have put definitely internal pressure on myself to work hard and to make sure that no one can accuse me of not getting the job done. And that's probably in response to my fear that there's going to be some challenge based on being a woman.
I had a great history teacher. I majored in history in college, but I was never taught about the suffrage movement, for instance. And I think if I had learned about the suffrage movement as a young high school student and learned that Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott got together over tea with a couple of other women and came up with the Seneca Falls Convention, which they put on 10 days later, and learned about the Declaration of Sentiments and learned about Frederick Douglass coming to the convention and convincing these women that they should fight for the right to vote because they thought that was too radical and too controversial.
I would like to see all implicit biases people have, the biases that they don't realize that are just inherent in their lives, eliminated so people don't have to deal with them. I'd also like to see women having more confidence, getting more credit for what they do at firms. I understand at some larger firms, often female attorneys may not get the case origination credit or the credit for the amount of work that they have done on a case because it came in for a senior partner. I'd like to see everyone get credit where credit's due and receive the accolades and praise and thanks for a job well done.
I would like to see the day where we no longer have to say the first woman and you fill in the blank. I'm waiting for the day where it's normal to have women appointed to our highest court, where we have women managing law firms, significant law firms, where women are lead counsel on multi-million-dollar cases. That's the day I'm looking for.
I want to see this profession get to a point where when a person wants to balance their work commitments with their family commitments, it's not seen as a weakness. And I want to get this profession to a point where women are seen as equals in all facets by clients and colleagues alike.
In 100 years, I hope we're not talking about gender disparity. I hope that what we're talking about is just the law, and with no real distinction between male-female litigators, male-female judges, that shouldn't be on the table. And hopefully, given the progress we're making, we'll be there in 100 years, hopefully a lot sooner than 100 years.